It can only be attributable to human error.
He meddled in things that you people. He meddled in things. He meddled in things.
Where will we go next? Just phantom from another time.
No one, Mr. Mulder.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
That is one big pile of shit.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Kaiju,
I'm Jasmine with
I'm Eli Watson.
and you're listening to
Cryptid.
Campfire.
Woo-hoo!
Whoop, whoop.
Hello everybody.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Cryptid Campfire. This week, it is Alex, Jasmine, and myself returning to discuss something that we didn't get to the bottom of.
And we're gonna reach out and we're gonna finally grab the bottom of it.
I don't know how much more clear things are going to be in this episode, though, because
It's
through my
gonna be-
research, it just got more confusing and convoluted. So,
Hey, hindsight's always 20/20, am I right?
Woohoo, everyone, welcome to a special remake episode.
Yes, the return of the Chief Man of the Chupacabra.
yes, we are revisiting El Chupacabra. I listened to our old episode, and though our research is minimal and we don't really know what we're talking about, we are pretty entertaining. It was a shorter episode, and we were really like surface level with some of the stuff. We didn't really go too deep. We kind of just read whatever it was that we first found when we looked something up.
Mhm.
But this time around, I got lots of information, and I'm not
Same.
sure which information is true. You know, it's hard to track some original news articles down. Original transcripts are nowhere to be found for some things. So it's
Ow.
going to be interesting, and we'll see where we end up.
Yeah. Adding on to what you just said, Jasmine, I think a large part of the difficulty comes from us not speaking Spanish
Mm.
and not being able to read it, because I know there's probably tons of South American, Central American articles and research. I know there's, Spanish research about the Chupacabra that, even if I could find it, I'm not going to be able to read it.
This is true.
And, that's something I kind of feel a little bit bad about, especially because I'm half Hispanic. So I don't know. I know how to speak Spanish a little bit, but I definitely need to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
But also, to address this and get this out of the way, a couple of pet peeves of mine about the Chupacabra. I've noticed a lot of people like to call it the El Chupacabra, which is redundant because El actually means the and is not included in the title. Like, you wouldn't say the El Perro when talking about a dog,
Yeah.
And I've also noticed
he
people
paid extra to get that.
right. Also L would be wrong in this situation, I think.
It'd be La Chupacabra.
It would be La Chupacabra. But anyways, that's none of my business. Another mistake I see often is El Chupacabras. And I feel like that one's even more offensive, because I'm like, why are you referring to the as multiple plural? I just don't get it. It's a clear
Yes, or
misunderstanding of Spanish, like on such a rudimentary level.
Mhm.
It's
But
a
we're gonna
little
do our
frustrating.
best.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we'll be fine, but like, I'm just saying to all those people on the internet, you could learn this through a YouTube video really quick.
Mhm.
Yeah. But anyways, I'll get off my high horse.
But we are going to be talking mostly about Spanish-speaking locations, like you mentioned. Most reports occur in Puerto Rico. There are also sightings reported from Mexico,
Mhm.
and there are even some obscure sightings reported in places of the United States, like southern Texas and Miami,
Mhm.
as well as Chupacabra-like experiences as far as Russia and the Philippines.
It's true.
Yeah, and I got that the Chupacabra's been sighted as far north as Maine.
Really?
Yes,
Yeah.
Maine and Missouri, and I think that information comes from elchupacabra.com, which has a list of sightings. Uh, Important to note, though, that that website has not been updated since 2012, and their most recent headline advertises their MySpace page.
Woohoo!
Oof.
And also important to note, a website about the Chupacabra, and I can't even get the Spanish right for it.
But speaking of Spanish, the name El Chupacabra is derived from two Spanish words. Eli, why don't you tell us what they are?
Oh, um,
You're half Hispanic?
I
Is that...
yeah, I am. That is correct. So it's chupar, which is goat. No, my bad. I always get this wrong. Is a verb that means to suck, and then we have cabra, which is goat. So goat sucker is literally what the chupacabra means. That's also the name of Alex in my phone contacts. So just so
I
you
do
know.
know that about Spanish, though. When you're speaking Spanish, the adjective usually comes after the main part of the word, right? So the
Yeah.
reason you might
Goat
mix those up is
sucker.
because of the difference between English and Spanish.
Mhm. It's yeah, because if anyone who studies languages, they will realize that English is actually the odd man out. Most languages are kind of like Spanish in the sense that the adjectives come before the main verb or the noun, or they come after the noun in this case. Um, but in English, you know, like the fast dog. Most languages don't do that. They say the dog fast. You know what I mean? That's how Spanish works. That's how Italian works. It's how Portuguese works. It's how French works. It's how so many languages work. And as English is the weird one. I'm just throwing that out there. I forgot why I even brought that up. But
The English language has no rules when you look at it.
you know what else doesn't have rules?
How the
Mm.
Chupacabra looks.
Ooh, real
Oh,
quick.
yes.
Before we get into the description, do you know where the name comes from?
Enlighten us, dear sir.
Well, the name is attributed to. We
Sounded
get the
like
name hello. We get the name the goat sucker from Puerto Rican comedian Silvero Perez, and
Ooh,
he's a big comedian in Puerto Rico, and he's mostly known for mixing comedy with motivational speeches.
interesting.
Which is, yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah, he is on off topic. He has all these books about mixing humor and motivation to better yourself. And one morning he was on a morning DJ radio show telling the jokes. Gets a story about some goats have been drained of their blood, and right on live air he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, the goat sucker."
Were you able to find the audio for that? I think we mentioned this the last time, and I don't know if we were able to actually find the audio from that.
I wasn't able to find the audio. I looked around just to see, but I remember last time when we looked up the Chupacabra doing our research, there was just a sentence. Oh, the comedian Severo Perez, made a term. And so when I looked recently, there was a whole more info about his career and his books and this and that. I was like, oh, this guy's pretty cool.
That's interesting because I remembered that we had mentioned that the last time
Hmm.
when we started this podcast, but through my research this time, his name never came up. Like none of the articles I read ever mentioned where the name came from. It just gave, the root words and what they mean.
Hmm.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, so always give proper credit to the comedians who make the cryptid names.
Yeah, well, who came up with Bigfoot?
George Carlin.
uh, so
What
we're
does this
just
bad boy look like?
Oh yeah, what does he look like?
Well, I'm going to read a quote that I got from the New York Times, and then we can kind of get into it. It says, sightings offer widely differing versions of the chupacabra. It has gray, scraggly hair and resembles a kangaroo or wolf, or it walks upright on three-toed feet. Some swear it hops from tree branch to tree branch and even flies, leaving behind, in the tradition of old Lucifer, the stench of sulfur. It peers through large oval, sometimes red eyes, and smells like a wet dog, as its reptilian tongue flicks the night air. It has, according to some, attacked humans, ripped through screen windows, and jumped family dogs at picnics. Now, I know that we're going to break down some of those descriptors, but
Mhm.
through my research, I have found that there's about 4 different chupacabras. There's an alien, a reptilian kangaroo, a winged creature, and a canine. So let's
Oh,
elaborate.
make it 5 because I have 2 reports of it being an ape-like creature.
Okay.
Well,
Let's see if we
let-
can figure this
well,
out.
let's say this is, and I'll throw this in here now because we talked about the descriptions. There's 4, maybe 5 types of chupacabras.
Mm-hmm.
May I just provide 1/6 example of a chupacabra? And this was a sentence I found in my research, and it does not elaborate in any way, shape, or form, and I can't find anything else. But the chupacabra, someone said, oh, it could be, an alien, U.S. experiment gone wrong, something, or could it be the embodiment of the wrath of God?
Oh my god.
Set forth to rule his holy anger on all the goats and chickens in the tri-state area.
Oh.
So that's what we're dealing with today, folks.
Wait, the tri-state area?
Yeah.
Like Phineas and Ferb?
Yeah. Ooh, what if Phineas has a weird head. Maybe he's a chupacabra.
Phineas has a weird head. But going off on that, actually, I was going to bring this up later, but I'll bring it up now because it seems to fit. So there's a researcher named Scott Corrales, and we'll get into more of his research in a little bit, but he asserts that the Chupacabra folklore extends back into the Taino culture. I don't know if you know about the Taino people,
Mm-mm.
but they were the indigenous people of the Caribbean, so Puerto Rico, Jamaica, islands of like that. Um, Unfortunately, all the Taino people were killed by the Spanish and through disease. Like I'm talking about a complete genocide of an entire civilization, and that's really, really sad. There are some people, because I think they did a DNA test and they discovered that some Puerto Ricans actually carry Taino blood in them, and so they call these people the Neo Taino, which is kind of cool. But
Yeah, that's a cool name. Especially if you
yeah,
put Neo in front of anything.
yeah, it's good. Neolithic.
Neolithic, Neo-Jurassic.
But yeah, so this mythology has a spirit named Maboya, and it's a spirit that causes misfortunes, evils, and diseases, and is known to torment people in different forms. The most popular being a dark-haired woman whose feet are backwards.
Whoa.
And so apparently they're really difficult to track down because obviously the tracks lead away from where they were going. Um, but yeah, so the Maboya only went out at night to do their misdeeds, and apparently they had so much power, they had the power to summon hurricanes. So yeah.
Whoa. They
Uh,
could call in the Heineck.
yeah, they could call in Hurricane Heineck. Uh, on a side note, Alex, you say something in that episode that I can't seem to find. You say something like, they see the storm, but they don't know the hurricane's coming, or something cool like that. I'm just like, what?
That was in reference to Project Blue Book Part 1 and Part 2. Now streaming on Spotify.
But yeah, I just figured I would throw in some of that mythology before we really get into the Chupacabra.
Mm-hmm.
Because I guess I just see a lot that no one addresses that aspect of it.
I mean, yeah, it's because we always try to look and see if there's any kind of myths, legends to the cryptids before we kind of look into like sightings or modern day history. So it's cool because if you listen to Chupacabra, and as everyone more or less knows, Chupacabra showed up in 1995, so he's kind of
Yes.
recent. So it's cool that there might be a little more history to it as we go on.
Or did he show up in 1995?
Oh.
Well, in 1995, that is when the reports kind of became popularized. I'll say this now. In a lot of the sources that I read, it mentions a 1995 The San Juan Star article. But I also read that the San Juan Star newspaper dedicated a humor column to El Chupacabra back in 1995, headlined Hunting for the Goatsucker. So I don't know if the information that's cited from this article comes from a factual article or a satire. I don't know if the satire has been improperly quoted as fact because multiple online sources mention, quote, a 1995 San Juan Star article, but I couldn't find an original transcript of a San Juan Star article. So, all that to say, the San Juan Star posted or published something. I said posted like it's 2020. They published something in 1995 describing El Chupacabra having a reptilian body, oval head, bulging red eyes, fanged teeth, and a long darting tongue.
Hmm. Interesting.
Other tales from Puerto Rico in the late 90s describe it as a bipedal creature 4 or 5 feet tall with large eyes, spikes down its back, and long claws.
Mm-hmm. That's funny. You mentioned that article because who could you imagine if that was like the Onion this whole time that people have been quoting about the Chupacabra?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if there were multiple articles published about El Chupacabra or if there was just the one and it was a satire from a humor column and people just took it and ran with it and improperly quoted it as factual.
Well, maybe we'll look into that and save it for the third remake of El Chupacabra.
Yeah. I do have some factual things, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, let's talk about the Vampire of Mocha.
Woohoo.
Shall we? So, as Jasmine said, most reports of the Chupacabra are attributed to 1995. In fact, the name itself was coined in 1995. But as we'll get into here, Bigfoot sightings were reported long before the name Bigfoot came around. So, and I think the Chupacabra, I don't think it's any different. So we have what's called El Vampiro de Mocha. And so it became notorious for draining the blood of its victims and leaving only a coin-sized hole in the body. And so the first report of the Vampire of Mocha comes from February 25th, 1975, in a neighborhood called Barrio Rocha. And so the vampire reportedly killed 15 cows, 3 goats, 2 geese, and 1 pig in one night. All of them found with puncture marks in the skin, not a drip of blood in their bodies. Police officers really attributed these deaths to dogs, despite the fact that these animals were fenced in to where dogs couldn't hop them. I'm imagining they're like 6, maybe 7 foot tall fences, maybe even taller. 10 foot. I think that's pretty standard. But
yeah, I mean, you figure that it's not like just a bunch of animals roaming around. It's like a nice farm where they're all gated and enclosed to keep away from all the wild animals, and something got in there and made a carnage.
Yeah, something did. But the carnage continues. So on March 7th, 1975, in Barrio Cruz, a cow was found with deep penetrating wounds into its skull. And so I think by this point, the total kill count had become 30 animals dead in Puerto Rico due to this vampire. And a lot of people actually believed it was some type of bird. And this woman named Maria Acevedo reported that a large bird landed on her roof in the middle of the night and was pecking at it. And then it took off and it screeched when it took off. But yeah, that's a little intense if you ask me.
Well, I mean, it only gets a little more intense after that.
Yeah, I mean, so on March 12th, 1975, a man named Luis Torres with his son and daughter-in-law witnessed what they described as lights on a police cruiser spinning in the night sky on the outskirts of town. And that's something else that comes up a lot in this instance, this flap of sightings, is that there's a lot of UFO activity. I kind of skimmed over that because we're not really focusing on the UFO aspect in this episode. But I mean, there's.
And I was going to say, yeah, because we won't go too far into it, but it's just an element that's just kind of there in the background as people just keep seeing lights, like usually over fields where the animals have or will be attacked. But that's about it. People are just seeing lights in the sky, and so far, there's no like laser beams or alien abductions are reported around the time.
Right. And going off of what Alex just said, the area the lights were seen was above a field, and in the next morning they found animals dead, attributed to the vampire. But pretty interesting. On March. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, this part gets awesome.
Go ahead. Tell me.
What I have next is, so after March 12th, after Louise and his children see the lights in the sky, a few days later on March 15th, he kills 2 pythons. But they're usually they're over 6 feet long, but these ones I think were even bigger. And there were these 2 pythons.
Really?
Yeah.
I got that they were 6 feet long, which was unheard of for these kind of snakes.
Okay, I might have.
But I could be wrong. I know. For anyone interested, they're called Puerto Rican boas.
And they killed the 2 snakes because they were coiled up and looked like they were about to attack a giant cow, 600-pound heifer.
Oh yeah.
And so I don't think it. Did you get how he killed them? I don't know if that was reported.
I didn't get that.
I assume either like he had like a a sword or a gun or something and fought off these 2 monsters.
Another note, I guess, by that point, by the time they killed the 2 snakes, there was over 90 deaths attributed to the vampire. And so people were really looking for a scapegoat, and it seemed like these snakes were it.
Yeah, so he killed the 2 snakes, and they said, "All right, problem solved." Until what is it?
3 days later.
3 days later.
Yeah.
When 2 goats were found drained of their blood with the puncture marks in their necks on the farm of a man named Hector Vega.
Yeah, and not only that. The following evening, 10 goats were found dead, 7 were injured, with another 10 missing entirely.
It's crazy. It's wild. Like this really starts kind of ramping up,
Oh yeah. That's when the Senate Agricultural Commission stepped in with Senator McGill Danis asking the Superintendent of Police Astal Toledo basically to get to the bottom of it. Yeah, it was like a huge paragraph that I read that was setting all this up, but basically what he said is try harder.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, all right.
You get out there and you find this vampire.
Yeah. And going back to the snakes, though, a Dr. Juan Rivero, who was a herpetologist, he said that Puerto Rican boas couldn't kill anything larger than a goat. And that they also don't suck blood.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, pythons they strangle their prey, then they engulf it.
Right. So I'm going to take you to the evening of March 25th at 10 p.m. A man named Juan Muniz was attacked by what he described as a horrible creature covered with feathers.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the story is he was walking home and noticed this giant bird-like thing, and it was freaking him out, so he decided to throw some rocks at it to get it to fly away, but instead he provoked it, and it flew at him, and he had to take some cover in the bushes. Eventually, he ran into a neighbor's house just to get away from this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know... Go ahead.
Oh, and then he hid from it, and then there was a small armed group that got together to try to hunt this monster down, but unfortunately they couldn't find it.
Yeah.
But they got their garlic, they got their steaks ready.
Yeah.
They said we'll get this creature of hell.
Yeah. So this is where it gets really crazy here. Over the next 3 nights. So in a town, so by April, the vampire of Mocha had spread all over Puerto Rico. And so that takes us to the town of Corozal, in a neighborhood called Barrio Negro. And so on April 2nd, on a farm belonging to a man named Isaro Melgar, 8 goats and a dozen rabbits were killed overnight. And so he was a rabbit breeder as well, so that was like a big impact on his financial income, if you will. So he set up the following night with a bunch of armed men, set up a watch to kind of watch the perimeter, because he had a feeling that whatever it was going to come back. And so he sprinkled, I think he said, he spread poison around some of the animal enclosures, and obviously had armed men watching over the animals at night. But for whatever reason, they decided to call it good at 3 a.m. Probably thinking...
That's when vampires have to go home.
Right, I don't know. They're probably thinking it's probably like 3 hours till sunrise, and you know, whatever it is probably isn't going to come anymore, you know. But they were wrong, because as soon as that happened, it came back and killed more animals. So I think this indicates a level of intelligence that is beyond like a regular animal.
Oh yeah.
Because, I mean, I figure, you know, an animal like a dog or something, if it was waiting, it would have waited an hour to maybe even 3 before, like, screw it, I'm going to go somewhere else and get some food, you know? Instead of waiting all night for this one opportunity. So they decided to set up overnight, all night, as a result of this. So on April 5th, Melgar and everyone else heard a deafening noise in the sky, and they were probably putting their hands over their ears because it was so loud, and they looked, and I think it says that Melgar saw a shadowy figure running from an open field into the forest. In the morning, when they went to that pasture that they saw the figure running from, they found 4 goats who were dead and drained of blood.
Vampire strikes again.
The vampire strikes back. So another UFO was reported. A huge cigar-shaped UFO reported. It was emitting yellow lights through portholes, and it was hovering about 1,500 feet above someone's home in Cupi. That's what it says. And it was there for 45 minutes just chilling up in the air before it flew away. And so I guess just to kind of summarize and get through this part a little bit quicker, but UFO reports and animal deaths really reached their peak in May of 1975. And there was a bunch of information about this, which I didn't really get, just because it's kind of redundant at this point. You know, large quantities of animals are dying. Strange lights in the sky are being reported. But by August of 1975, the vampire just kind of disappeared. And it disappeared from Puerto Rico, but I will say that other places were having something similar going on.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1977 and 1978, there were similar attacks happening in the Dominican Republic on the border between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. People in the town of Barahona claimed that it was a gigantic dog that was, killing animals, but it doesn't explain the fact that whatever this was opening pens like chicken houses and getting inside. I mean, I suppose a fox could do that, but it's still pretty strange.
Mm-hmm.
And the government of the Dominican Republic actually said that it wasn't anything paranormal and it wasn't a UFO. They said that it was actually just poor people playing pranks for attention, even though this was honestly destroying people's livelihoods because they couldn't afford to just kill their own animals.
Well, I mean, it's crazy to be like, oh man, a field of 90 dead animals, blood drained and giant holes punched in their heads. Boy, classic pranksters,
Yeah.
Gets them every time.
Yeah, the people themselves blamed it on the Baka, or these voodoo entities, because I can only assume there's a lot of voodoo and black magic, Santeria stuff happening in this part of the world. But
Well, that
brings us...
was all news to me. Are you is there more on this Mocha vampire that you're about to tell us?
No.
No?
There is more. There is more, but I'm not about to tell you it.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say I didn't read any of that. I didn't go and find any of that. I did read the LA Times said that there were reports of animals dying inexplicably in Puerto Rico back in 1970. And I also read briefly in another article it mentioned vampire, saying that it also attacked small animals, but opinion differed on whether it was alien, animal, or a vampire. So the whole reason that we're saying any of this, the whole reason that Eli told the story is to go back to the idea that even though the term El Chupacabra was popularized in the 90s, we're assuming that it was still a thing back in the 70s and that it was it was kind of retroactively blamed. It was like, hey, we're calling it this thing and it seems really similar to what happened a while ago, so we're going to say that it's the same thing.
Right. Also, I would like to say that all of that information was found and translated by Scott Corrales. And so I mentioned him earlier when I was talking about the Taino culture. And so as far as I can tell, he's really the only person who's done something like that, where he was taking reports and translating them to English. So...
And there's definitely a lot more on the Vampire of Mocha than when we first took a crack at the Chupacabra. And the reason why it's even connected is because when we first did our research, for episode 2, we used the dreaded Wikipedia. And
speak for yourself.
And it's like, oh, the Chupacabra, 1995, da da da. But did you hear about the Vampire of Mocha in 1975? And I was like, oh, dang, I did not. Let me look in. And then doing my research today, I was like, what the heck? Let's check out Wikipedia. And there's no mention of the Vampire of Mocha.
Yeah, it took it off, didn't it?
The
Wikipedia article has definitely changed.
Oh, very much so. So it's kind of fun to look back and, that's the reason why we brought this up is because it was connected, over a year ago. And now people are trying to, separate a little bit more.
Yeah. You do have to kind of search really, really hard for this information. It definitely... The only reason I found all of this was because I found one website that talked about the Vampire of Mocha, and they had a link to their sources. And when I clicked their link, it took me to this obscure blog that belongs to Scott Corrales, which probably hasn't been updated in years because he's probably some old dude, and doesn't really use the internet that often. But all of his research was up there. And so that's where I got most of this. And I'll tell you guys where it's at the end of the episode. One more thing before we really move on. There's even Scott Corrales is basically trying to assert that the Chupacabra goes even farther back than the 1970s. And so I have something here from 774 AD, which sounds a lot like the Chupacabra, but there's also some discrepancies, so I don't think we can really say it was. But it was basically during the reign of Emperor Leo IV of the Eastern Roman Empire. And so there was this plague that swept through, and right after the plague were these carnivorous animals that kind of showed up. And so we have a Syriac priest and chronicler of the time. His name is Dennis Detel Mar. I totally butchered that, but he reported that these creatures had no fear of man, and they resembled wolves, but with smaller and narrower muzzles and horse-like ears. And so they attacked Anatolia, and it reports that they stole children from their beds and carried them away.
Whoa.
Yeah, and dogs refused to bark at them. Herds of cattle were destroyed by these. And when they went to fields full of goats and sheep, they would take multiple at a time.
Whoa.
But I guess, like, people tried to fight against them. They were more or less successful, but at the end, these animals, whatever they were, just migrated away to what is in present-day northern Iraq. But one important note that I should mention is it describes that on the dorsal spine of these animals, it had bristles similar to a pig. So kind of like spikes on its back, if you will.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I picture remember the 2018 cult film Rampage with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson?
Yes.
When Ralph the big mutant wolf shows up and he just starts growing spines out of his back.
Does that happen?
Yeah.
Oh, sick.
Yeah, and he starts shooting them out of helicopters.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Damn, I need to watch that movie again.
Yeah, we all should. Woohoo, Rampage.
Jasmine, you down?
Sure.
Rampage. All right, everyone. Thank you for this wonderful talk. We'll be watching Rampage now.
Yeah, we'll come back later.
No.
And I'm sorry, I keep doing this, but I do have one more thing. It's a sighting that occurred before 1995 that has been retroactively attributed to the Chupacabra, and it's real short. In Puerto Rico, there's pig, goose, and chicken killings, and entire banana trees were ripped apart.
Oh no!
Yeah, which I don't know. Banana trees. I don't know.
They're huge, right?
They're huge. Yeah, they're pretty wild. But yeah,
Oh, I was just gonna say, have you seen all the bananas that hang from it?
Uh-uh.
They're just like these giant like bundles that I think if they fall, they like kill people.
Jeez.
Because it's just the banana trees are gigantic. So go Google it. They're crazy. And imagine those things ripped up and thrown everywhere.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. But during this whole thing, there was a couple reports of ape-like creatures roaming around. But that brings us to 1995, so please take it away.
Well, there's still even other descriptions of what the Chupacabra is reported to look like. Unfortunately, I don't have the years attributed to these claims because they were kind of just listed in a list of like what the Chupacabra looks like. But I briefly mentioned that some reports describe a creature that stood upright and resembled a large reptilian kangaroo with huge red eyes. Brazilian witnesses also claimed to have seen an animal that has monkey-like hind legs that flies and leaps through the air. And we've got a report from Arizona that says the chupacabra has a beak and wings, and a wingspan of 8 to 10 feet, a beak 2 feet long, and a height of 5 feet.
Whoa.
And then we also have the more modern image of a chupacabra, which is like a hairless canine-like creature.
Mhm.
So chupacabra is literally all across the board, and I think it's another one of those things that might be a catch-all term for unidentified strange animals. You just like see
Mhm.
something strange and you're like, oh my god, it's the chupacabra.
Right.
That's if we
Um,
take into account all of these different descriptions. But if we're looking at, the victims of the attacks and everything that Eli and Alex have just told us, I think there is kind of one consensus on what the chupacabra is. Maybe not what it looks like, but what it does.
Mhm.
Yeah, right. And yeah, the modern day dog chupacabra is totally phony baloney, dude. But I guess we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, we will. But yeah, 1995 comes along, and that's when it gets to be in the news, and it kind of circulates around the internet. Goats, hens, rabbits, geese all fell prey to a creature that reportedly sucks the blood, leaving the lifeless carcasses. Um, there's a report saying that on Halloween of 1995, the chupacabra had a field day, uh, draining the blood of 5 goats and 20 parakeets. Now,
Oh no.
Oh,
I don't understand the parakeets. I really don't. But that's what the LA Times said. uh, and all of the animals that were found were left uneaten. We mentioned this a little bit in our first episode when we talked about it, about how strange it is that the carcasses are not, you know, destroyed and ripped apart. They're
Mhm.
just punctured and the blood is drained. At this time, there were no specimens found, like there were no bodies or anything like that. And then there was that whole thing about how people think that one of the original witnesses was just making it up because she recently watched a horror film.
Mhm.
And we talked a little bit more about that in our first episode.
yeah, Madeline Tolentino.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And did you have this, Jasmine?
I didn't really go deep into it because we did talk about it in our first episode, and I don't know how much I believe that it was just that.
Mhm.
Why don't you take it?
Or Alex, do you have this?
Yes, I have a little bit. So, um, let me see if I have this right, because this is what gets interesting. Uh, did you guys get that March 1995 is when the chupacabra kind of started, or attack started being reported?
I said 1995, but I didn't really get a month. I just have that the winter is kind of when
It
it
kicks up.
picks up.
Mhm.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because so I got the first initial reportings of maybe some dead goats, some dead animals started being reported around March 1995. Then hard cut to September 1995. We have a witness report by a lady named Madeline Tolentino,
Mhm.
and if I remember correctly, I'll give it a quick one, but she was at home. She heard a noise and looked out her window and saw something running because I think she lived by a jungle. She lived like in a more
Right.
rural
I mean,
part area.
yeah.
So she saw something running, and she described it as maybe a bipedal, scaly creature with long limbs, spikes along its back, and possibly red eyes.
Yeah.
And people say, "Oh, well, wouldn't you know it? The 1995 sci-fi classic Species came out that year."
Mhm.
And it's if you haven't heard of it, it's a movie that's got it's a stellar cast, I might add. It's got Natasha Hendridge in her first leading role as the alien monster. We got
Ooh.
Sir Ben Kingsley, Michael Madsen, Alfred Molina, Doc Ock himself.
Oh, wow.
Forrest Whitaker is in it as well, and the actual monster designs by H.R. Giger.
Oh, what do you
Which-
know?
Yeah,
What a wild movie.
right? And here's the. I don't think we went into what the synopsis of the movie was, but I looked into it as a refresher, and it takes place modern day. You know, I think we mentioned before the SETI satellite.
Mm.
To where
Yeah.
we launched it and it had like music and pictures of humanity and if
Oh,
there's any
that's not SETI.
oh, what's that?
SETI's the big radar dishes, the search for extraterrestrial
Oh,
intelligence.
okay, that's okay.
I know what you're talking about, but I don't
Mhm.
know what that's
That,
called.
that's a different thing, but they're using SETI and they get a signal from an alien race and they decode it and it's actual ingredients for um, renewable energy.
Oh.
And they say, "Oh, dang, these aliens are awesome. They gave us some energy. All right, let's tell them that we're humans. Here's, or That's where they send the pictures and what humanity is and Earth is. And they get a second transmission back, and it's how to genetically engineer alien DNA with human DNA to make a better species, I guess you could say. They say, "Gee willikers, these aliens are so nice. Let's make a alien." And then it turns out to be a monster that rampages through LA, killing and humping everything in its path.
Oh God.
Oh, dang.
But that's what species is. But here's what's crazy, because everyone always says, "Oh, the description that Madeline Torrentino gave sounds just like Species." But that movie came out in July 1995 worldwide. She saw it in September, but there are reports of dead animals being made in March 1995 that year.
Right. And so I guess the reason we're talking about Madeline Tolentino so much is due to Benjamin Radford's research, because he claims that Madeline Tolentino is patient zero, basically the first person to have witnessed the Chupacabra,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't believe. And basically for the reason Alex just described it right now. There's reports of it happening before,
Mm-hmm.
like, what is it, 6 months of this is going on, animals are dying. Are you seriously going to look me dead in the eye and tell me for 6 months no one saw anything?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm honestly of the belief that, you have to think about it. You see something strange and weird, you're not gonna, you know, kind of flaunt that around. Like, hey guys, I saw this weird looking thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
especially in a rural community, that's not something you just share,
Mm-hmm.
And like you go back to like Bigfoot sightings and stuff. A lot of people don't even like to talk about it, you know? And it's like, if we're thinking about the Vampire of Mocha as well, you know, those people probably saw something as well, you
Mm-hmm.
know? If we're really getting specific here, maybe Melgar was the guy who first saw the Chupacabra and it was a shadowy figure running through the trees. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I
What if
really,
it was 500? Was it 500 AD? Is
yeah,
that?
574 AD, with the dog-like creatures,
Mm-hmm.
Or what if it was the Taino people who, saw this creature and based their legends off of it, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Like I really don't believe that. I really don't believe you can find patient zero of anything.
Mm-hmm. That's a
Um,
good point. That's a
that's
valid argument, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's just what I'm saying. Especially because it's kind of a smear campaign the way he talks about it as well.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, well, she saw the movie and she thought it was happening in real life. And it's like, oh, so some dumb Hispanic farmer can't separate fact from fiction.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
real nice guy.
In, in
Just
in the year 1995, nobody knows what a movie is.
right. It's like I'm pretty sure this woman could tell the difference. You know,
Mm-hmm.
just the audacity of it just blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But
But that's why
anyways,
we're here to try to look into it and kind of actually shift through the muck and the mire.
yeah, right. November 16th, 1995, in San German, Puerto Rico, a group of people chased a chupacabra away as it was about to kill three roosters. and they described it as having large almond-shaped eyes, an oval face, and small hands protruding from its shoulders.
Hmm.
And on November 28th, actually, of 1995, they found, it's kind of vague, they say hand or footprints after attack at Vega Baja, and it had 6 fingers or toes.
Hmm.
Well, some of the other stuff that happened in 1995, this information came from Animal Planet, which I know can be hit or miss because they do a lot of fictional stuff too nowadays. But this was an article that had a couple of slides about 1995 in Puerto Rico and stuff. Farmers found sheep completely drained of blood with the puncture wounds. A woman found her chickens dead with perforations in the neck, as well as her cat, who had its genitals removed,
Uh-oh.
and her guinea pigs with their throats slit. Again, this comes from Animal Planet, and I didn't find anything else about this certain circumstance. But then it also talks about how it makes the jump to the United States, killing 69 chickens, goats, and ducks in Florida. And then apparently there were attacks in Michigan and Oregon as well. And then it was just a media sensation in Mexico by 1996.
Yeah, I have this to share. So, March 1996, on the TV talk show Christina, which was basically the Spanish version of Oprah, that was, I think, the first time they started talking about the Chupacabra outside of Puerto Rico.
Oh.
And that's actually shortly after that, that's when it started being reported being seen in the States. The first sighting in the States occurred in Miami in March of 1996.
Whoa.
So, and I think they actually got tracks from that. I think they
Interesting.
were 5 inches long and 4.5 inches wide. Super tiny.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And this was 96, you said?
mm-hmm.
Wow.
Kind of crossed over into Mexico. It was being reported in Tijuana, in Mochis, in Chihuahua, in Texcoco. So like all over the place, you know, and they described it as being more rodent-like, and it was only 3 feet tall.
What?
Yeah.
This doesn't make
He-
any sense.
He lost some weight in the year.
Chupacabra has an identity crisis.
Dude, he can't decide what he is.
But we also have mentioned in the past that it's likely that there's more than one Chupacabra. So it's like a species.
And
For sure.
speaking of, identity crisis, I mean, people keep telling the Chupacabra what it is. They're like, "You're a goat sucker." He's like, "But I eat chickens and pigs as well."
Yeah. But sightings pop up everywhere. Like there was a surge in Chile as well in the year 2000.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go into detail with that. I mean, any source that you look at just has like lists and lists and bullet points of, sightings and what kind of animals were killed and where they were left and how many and all this other stuff. But the one factor that remains true with all of these alleged sightings and attacks is the fact that the animals are left intact with puncture wounds and no blood.
Yeah. And that's something else that Benjamin Radford tries to debunk as well, saying that the autopsies report, that not all of the blood was gone, that there was still some left in there. And it's like, but the question still remains, where did the majority of it go? Because it definitely wasn't around the bodies. But say what you were going to say.
I'm scrolling through my notes a little bit. We are kind of jumping around a little bit, but it is all relevant. Talking about the blood, I read somewhere. This again comes from Benjamin Radford. This kind of explains what you were just saying. He says when an animal dies, the heart and the blood pressure stop. So the blood seeps to the lowest part of the body and coagulates and thickens. And this gives the illusion that they've been drained of blood because, you go up to the body and if you like try and poke it and move it around and stuff, no blood is going to come out of those puncture wounds because it's congealed at the bottom, whatever the bottom may be, whatever way it's laying on the ground. So that is what he says when it comes to the missing blood.
And that's fair, but like, yeah, I don't know. If you kill an animal by, like killing that cow with the, attacks to the head, and there's no blood around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the thing too, is there's no blood at the sites.
At the site,
Well,
and that's just strange.
Well, what's crazy too is just talking about the audacity is just like, well, when the body dies, the blood settles, so it looks like it's kind of empty. It's like, oh, okay, that's great. What's killing 90 animals in 2 weeks?
Yeah, right.
It's just like, okay, fine. We don't, a flying kangaroo with red eyes that bites the necks of goats. Oh wow, what kind of crazy? But something's killing all these animals. Something's leaving these puncture marks, and he's just like, the blood. You plebes.
Right.
Speaking of the kangaroo, I had this in my notes and I didn't know if I was going to say it because it is really random, but Alex just brought the kangaroo thing up again, and so I'm going to say it. Did you guys know that in 1934 in Tennessee, there were reports of blood-drinking, tree-dwelling killer kangaroos?
No.
No way.
I didn't go deep into it. It was just a little side note, but I did Google it real quick, and there are a couple of articles. Like, there's some headlines talking about how this was a thing back in the 30s in Tennessee, and lots of hunting
Wild.
dogs were killed.
Whoa.
And hold on. Oh yeah, lots of hunting dogs were killed, and it was blamed on this killer kangaroo. And just in my brief side note research, I didn't get any more information on that, but we had killer kangaroos in the States.
But you know what else is kind of similar? The Jersey Devil was also described as kangaroo-like, yes?
Mm-hmm.
So this is going back to 1996 on January 8th. After killing a pair of sheep in Canovanas, Puerto Rico, a man named Jose Febo saw it sitting in a tamarind tree. And when it saw him, it jumped out of the tree and ran away like a gazelle. So not the first time, I guess, a chupacabra has been sighted in a tree.
Mm-hmm.
If we're gonna call that kangaroo-like creature a chupacabra.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, pretty nuts, huh? But I mean, I guess we're gonna start talking about the dog-like one.
Ooh, is this Chupacabra phase 2 of the Cryptidverse cinematic universe?
Oh my god. I guess what's interesting. I'm just thinking about this now. It's like, what was the first reported sighting of a chupacabra, a dog-like chupacabra?
I don't know.
Because I don't know either. Like, when did that happen? When did the change happen?
I want to say 2000 is when we start getting, especially in Texas, they start popping up more.
Yeah, but because it's interesting to me because it's only in the United States that it's reported as being a dog-like creature.
It's because we like dogs.
Yeah, I know, right? But like, there's like 200 original reports from Puerto Rico in 1995, none of them which describe a dog-like creature.
Well, a lot of quote explanations, like for the people who don't believe in El Chupacabra, they attribute the deaths and the attacks to wild dogs and wolves and those types of animals. So maybe it has something to do with that. They're trying to make more sense of it. The government's telling us it's dogs, and so we see this thing that looks like a dog, and that must be what it is.
Right. It's a theory kind of touted around by a guy named Barry O'Connor, who's a biologist at the University of Michigan. He kind of says that a lot of the reports of dog-like chupacabras is basically the result of coyotes with what's known as Sarcoptes scabiei. which is a disease. It leaves them with little fur, thick skin, and a rank odor.
It's I think it's. Did you get much about it?
Not really, no. You got more?
Just a little bit. So it's psychoptic mange, I believe, is what they have,
Uh,
and it's actually caused by mites.
ah,
So it's itch-inducing mites that burrow into the upper layer of the skin, and that's what causes the hair loss and they have like the mangy red skin or the weird growths and stuff.
mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is apparently psychoptic mites started on humans hundreds of thousands of years ago,
Ew.
and then once we were like, hey, look at all these wild animals walking around, let's domesticate these doggies. We gave them the power of friendship and psychoptic mites.
Oh, man.
Yeah, well, in humans, with scabies, it's just a minor annoyance. Like, it is gross, but like it's not gonna kill you. It's not gonna debilitate you. It's just like a skin irritation. But when a dog gets it, it can be life threatening for
Mm.
canines like coyotes, because they haven't evolved especially effective reactions to the infection. And so when they get this infection, they become weak, and so they attack livestock, which is easily accessible, rather than going to hunt.
Right, but I also call BS on that. Because take a look at the Tasmanian tiger, which was also attacking livestock. And I wouldn't say that the Tasmanian tiger was, in a weakened state when it was doing that. It didn't have scabies, It's, I think it's true for any animal that's carnivorous, like why does a fox catch chickens in a hen house? You know what I mean? It's not because it has scabies. It's because chickens are easy to get when they're all trapped in a place. Any animal that feeds on livestock knows that,
Yeah.
So I
Why
really
work
don't think.
harder?
Yeah, exactly. It's like I really don't buy that as an explanation. It's
or
like
or even
sure.
or even just the fact, because I mean, they're like, oh man, these dogs, that are a little weak and sick, they're going around, they're taking down 600-pound cows with single bites, and
Yeah.
they're killing 20 goats at a time, even though goats, when attack, sometimes use their horns as defense.
Yeah. It's
So
like, yeah, it took down the 600-pound cow, drained it of blood, and removed its genitals because it's easier. It's like, okay.
and it mopped up and bleached all the blood around the area too, for good measure.
Right. Yeah, right. I don't know. Just this is why people don't take the Chupacabra seriously, because there's whack-ass explanations that people just take as truth.
I mean, when you put it sounds reasonable. Like, what I said, what I explained, both about the blood and about the hunting. Like, when you first hear it, it's like, oh yeah, sure, that makes sense. But then
Mhm.
when you think about it more, just like you explained, it doesn't really make sense.
Mm-hmm. I do have one more report. I believe this is from 1996 of a guy named Osvaldo Rosado of Guanica, Puerto Rico, and he claims he was grabbed by an ape-like creature in a bear hug and was squeezed so tight that he actually had bruises on his abdomen.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so I guess that brings me to another report from 1996, and this one in Sweetwater, Florida, where 69 animals were killed in March of 1996, and a witness reported that he saw a dark brown, monkey-like creature walking around on two legs. So there are some like ape-like reports of chupacabras, but
Well, what's interesting is because it's in Florida, what if it was a skunk ape?
Yeah,
right, yeah,
the whole idea of an ape-like chupacabra is like so different from anything else that we've been
right,
talking about. I mean, I know the
right.
descriptions vary. I know there's lots of differences, but if you're talking about a bipedal ape-like creature, that's something totally different. Like, that's in
Mhm.
Bigfoot
Right.
territory.
Yeah.
It
That's
totally
like if
is.
they were like, oh man, so in 1997, the chupacabra showed up at a ranch, and he was a giant plesiosaur. They're just like, what?
Could you imagine? But the most recent sighting I got actually occurred this year. Oh, it's not quite a sighting, but it's a report. And a hearsay at that point. So March 5th, 2020, it was reported that in Valle Bravo in Mexico, a 54-year-old taxi driver was found with deep wounds and torn clothing, and he was found on March 1st of this year. Cause of death was a carnivorous animal. The authorities chalk this up to either an escaped lion or a tiger, which who knows with the cartels running around down there. I'm not trying to sound weird about Mexico. Now I just made it weird, but
You can edit it out.
yeah. But basically, fear spread so far because of the result of this guy being killed by whatever animal killed him that actually basic education classes were stopped. Like people stopped going to school and started like staying in their houses because of whatever this was.
Whoa.
And
Now,
go ahead.
would you say that that is the first report of like a human being attacked? Because I mean, who knows how many reports there are of people who were found dead with puncture wounds or whatever. But I feel like if there were, that we would be able to find those news articles about people who were found with puncture wounds and no blood.
Well, I feel like in that case, it wouldn't be labeled as a chupacabra, but rather a vampire instead.
That's true.
You know, and so I don't know.
So do you think this 2020 thing, would be a chupacabra or a vampire?
Neither.
Neither.
I'm with the official report that it was probably a lion or a tiger because I don't know. It just doesn't. There's not a whole lot of details given. And I mean, the article itself is from the Yucatan Times, and it just kind of throws it out there like, oh, is this really a lion or a tiger, or could it be the chupacabra? But it doesn't really provide any evidence, like. So I'm willing to bet they found this guy like probably ripped to shreds, and there was blood everywhere, and
Yikes.
I don't know. I'm willing to bet that it looked like he got attacked by a wild animal of some kind. So,
yeah,
I'm not willing to say that this is chupacabra attacking man.
They switched from chicken and pig to man.
Yeah. Oh, I have a quote from Lauren Coleman talking about the coyote with mange theory.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so he says this to National Geographic, actually. He said, it's certainly a good explanation, but it doesn't mean it explains the whole legend. And I have more. Oop. All right, where it is. There it is. He says, it was actually a big mistake. Because of the whole confusion with most of the media reporting chupacabras now as dogs or coyotes with mange, you really don't even hear any good reports from Puerto Rico or Brazil anymore like you did in the early days. These reports have disappeared and the reports of canids with mange have increased. I don't know, dude. It's a conspiracy. It's a smear campaign. People are trying to prove it doesn't exist.
Well, Lauren Coleman also says that the chupacabra is like Jennifer Lopez because it is cross-cultural.
Did he really say that?
Animal Planet says he did, and I think I read it on one other place too. He says what's unique about the chupacabra is that it's crossing languages, which I think shows how small our world is getting. It's sort of like Jennifer Lopez, kind of cross-cultural, and I feel like that comment was maybe tongue-in-cheek or something like that, because from what I gathered, it doesn't sound like you just said, Lauren Coleman doesn't subscribe to the idea that the chupacabra looks like a canine with mange. One of the articles I read said that Lauren Coleman doesn't even believe in El Chupacabra, but I don't know if that's accurate. It wasn't a quote from him. I'm sure he's got plenty of research and opinions on it, but I don't know exactly what they are.
It was actually Lauren Coleman that I found out about Scott Corrales from.
Mm.
So I don't know. That stands for something, I feel like. But yeah, maybe he doesn't believe in it.
I
But
mean,
I mean,
I,
who cares?
they didn't do the full quote to where the Chupacabra. It says the Chupacabra is like Jennifer Lopez. Used to have a little, now they have a lot, but they're still Jenny from the block.
Well, when it comes to explanations, like whether, the chupacabra is real or if it's just a dog with mange, there's other beliefs too. There's the thought that it's the result of top secret US scientific experiments taking place. I read something about it being an escaped troop of monkeys, which had been experimented on.
Oh no,
Um,
Oh, wild.
it's Planet of the Apes. They're just Chupacabras.
Yeah.
Oh my.
There's people who think that some of the animal attacks could just be humans who are in a religious sect or just regular attacks from other animals.
Mm-hmm.
And then, speaking of attacks from other animals, zoologists have suggested that the condition of some of the chupacabra victims may actually be the result of exaggerated retellings of the work of other animals, such as a tropical species of bat known to feed on the blood of small mammals. However, I don't see how that stands because a goat in livestock, those aren't small mammals.
Right.
But
Mm-hmm.
there are also species that are known to eat warm blooded animals, which I thought was scary.
Yeah. I don't know. It just seems like all these explanations and the solvings, because Benjamin Radford even says that he solved the mystery, and it's
Yeah.
like, you didn't solve it, dude. Like, well, he discounts the Vampire of Mocha entirely
Mm-hmm.
without really addressing it, which I feel like is poor research methods. But I
Animal
don't know.
Planet Animal Planet also claims that in June of 2000, Chilean newspapers printed accusations from ufologists claiming that military officials found 3 chupacabra eggs and caught the chupacabra as well. And then
Whoa.
that material was supposedly turned over to NASA for some reason. Um, and radio programs in Chile have also accused the American Space Agency of creating the chupacabra in a lab in the first place while conducting genetic tests on other animals similar to baboons.
Mm-hmm.
However, NASA denies the charge with more annoyance than amusement, saying, before this, it was the face of Mars. And before that, it was modifying the weather. Before that, we were beaming radiation from satellites to make people impotent, says NASA spokesman Brian Welch. And before that, they were saying we faked the moon landing. So he suggests that the chupacabra is blamed on NASA because the space agency is the last place anyone in Chile would think to call and ask about it.
That's weird.
I don't even know if that is true, to be completely honest, because again,
Mm-hmm.
it comes from Animal Planet, and I don't mean to discount Animal Planet, but it's a known fact that they create mockumentaries and other fictional works, and it's not always factual. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if any of what I just said is true or not, but it comes from
Right?
Animal Planet.
But I mean, like, these are the same people who made Mermaids, The Body Found,
Yeah.
And I mean,
which they actually released a sequel to,
mm-hmm.
which I need to watch now.
hmm Now, Eli, I forgot to mention this because you were talking about the whole gorilla ape-like type creature, and we mentioned, oh, that's more in Bigfoot territory and whatever. But I read something similar in Santiago in 2000. A citizen rented a gorilla suit and an alligator mask and hung a sign around his neck that read Chupacabra and spent the days lurking on downtown streets, leaping and biting at commuters' necks.
Whoa.
So I also, again, don't know how true that is because it comes from Animal Planet, but I wondered when you started talking about that if those were going to be the same things, but they're clearly not because this one supposedly happened in Chile and you were talking about Florida. So I don't know.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of weird information on the internet.
That's the statement of the year, baby.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of lots of
Mm-hmm.
conspiracies, lots of strange things in regards to the Chupacabra.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if you can definitively say you've solved anything. And I don't know, I really don't know. It's like so strange, The biggest part of what makes it so strange is just the variety of reports.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there doesn't seem to be a general consensus on exactly what it looks like,
Mm-hmm. And that's what's crazy too, is it's just like it's a can of worms when you look into the Chupacabra because it's just all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just like, well, I solved it. I don't know, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Well, like it was hard. The Chupacabra pops up in a lot of pulp culture, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
He one of the most recent examples, he's in Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald.
Is he really?
Yeah, Johnny Depp. It's like he's like Johnny Depp's little pet. It's like this little tiny lizard thing.
Oh,
And it's got big. It's cute because it's got like its teeth look like a bear trap kind
I don't like this.
of. But
Where's my phone?
oh,
No, you're good. Keep talking.
so he pops up in that. The Chupacabra's in a lot of video games. He's in Castlevania, Diablo, The Elder Scrolls, and more importantly, a little game refers to him. A little game we like to call Red Dead Redemption 2.
Is he in the second one?
He's referenced. Apparently, at one of the Campfire events, Javier will tell everybody that his mom used to tell him a story when he was a kid about the Chupacabra,
Oh, wild.
and he doesn't
Also,
mention. Yeah, he
go
doesn't
ahead.
mention it by name, but he talks about how it hunts down cattle. And then here in her version, it would also eat little boys who didn't do what they were told.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. So that one's
Wild.
for you, Javier.
I mean, I heard a lot of stories like that growing up.
Hmm.
Growing up with Hispanic friends and stuff like that, they, their parents tell you stories of the chupacabra, whatever.
Oh dang.
Um, None that I actually really remember because I didn't buy any of them. But
Ugh.
I know the chupacabra shows up in another video game. I know it shows up in Undead Nightmare from
Hmm.
Red Dead Redemption 1. You can actually kill it in that one.
Yeah.
But I know it shows up in that game, Pop Tropica. Have you heard of that?
Oh, I've heard
I
of it. I haven't played it though.
I think it was created by Jeff McKinney. Is his name? The guy who wrote Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
Think so?
Yeah, it was created by that guy, whatever his
Okay.
name is. And so the basic concept of the game is you have a little avatar dude, and you play as him, and you go from island to island solving mysteries. And they added a cryptid themed island. You can find Bigfoot, the Loch Ness monster, the chupacabra, and something else. I forget. But yeah, the chupacabra one was a lot of fun. And you end up finding a cave, which is kind of funny because you end up finding its eggs
Mm-hmm.
and you find the chupacabra itself. Unfortunately, it looks like a dog.
Oh.
I was really let down, but it's a cool looking dog.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like one of those weak, mangy ones. It's like a cool, like big boy, but still not as cool as the alien looking one.
Mm-hmm. Uh, I was gonna say, I think this might be the first example that I ever heard of a chupacabra. The chupacabra pops up in an episode of Dexter's Laboratory.
Oh,
Oh
really?
my gosh.
Yeah.
I think I remember this.
I totally forgot about this episode too till I was looking it up, and it turns out that Dexter had created the little tiny reptilian monster that he named Charlie to scare off his sister Dee Dee from a secret laboratory, but it escaped down to Mexico and it's been chewing on goats ever since.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I
Yeah.
remember that. Oh my god, he's so
Wild.
cute.
Yeah, and the design's great. It's like a cute simplified version of, what you kind of picture for a chupacabra.
Let me see
That's
this.
so funny.
But I think that might be the first time I ever probably heard of the chupacabra. Now that I think about it. And it's funny too, because Dexter's Lab was late 90s. I think this episode, it said, was 97, 98 maybe. So
That's fun.
pretty relevant.
Wild. This is crazy. I think
Right?
I remember this.
Hmm.
That's I definitely remember the goats.
Yeah.
Wild. That's crazy.
But that was a fun blast from the past for me because I love Dexter's Laboratory and it was a good show.
Yeah, it was.
I know there's a chupacabra. So our friends at Creepy Acres, they put on that puppet show, with what's his name? I don't remember. They have, they do the puppets with the Bigfoot and the Chupacabra
Mhm.
and Dogman and stuff. But yeah, I really like their Chupacabra character. He's really funny.
That's awesome.
So if you guys get a chance to check that out, and yeah, he always wants to like kill people. Um, that's kind of his shtick. But yeah, that's all I got for Chupacabra pop culture. I don't even
Yeah,
think there's a movie on the Chupacabra.
there are actually,
Oh, there are.
but they're the classic Sci-Fi Channel original movies.
Oh, Seafeed, dude.
There's
No.
there's the 2003 Chupacabra Dark Waters, which is about a chupacabra getting loose on a cruise ship.
Oh God.
Oh, nice.
And there's a made-for-TV movie from 2013 called The Chupacabra versus the Alamo.
Well, can anybody tell me who the Chupacabra is versing today?
Oh yeah, it's time, baby.
Wasn't Stefan gonna do it?
That's
Nah,
right.
I'm joking. I'm
Live all the way
joking.
from Arizona.
I got it right
Welcome
here.
in.
That's so true. He was gonna do it. He's not here.
No, I don't think he was.
Wasn't he?
No.
I don't remember. It doesn't matter. Take it away, Eli.
That's
Yes.
because everyone was like, "Who's doing the Coliseum for today?" And like, no one seems to remember the discussion we had last week,
I don't.
where I said, because I was like, I want to do it.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, and then I texted you. Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm ready.
that's right. All right. So we're going to the Coliseum today. We open on an epic expanse of desert. High plateaus scatter the landscape, but in their midst is a perfectly round, concave plateau. It's no plateau. It's the Coliseum. Cowboys and vaqueros alike fire their six-shooters in the air. Hoots and hollers, hats wave above their heads as we see the first gate open. Ka-chink, ka-chink, ka-chink. Stepping from the darkness, escorted by two guards, comes a 4-foot-tall, green, bipedal creature with menacing red eyes. I wrote green eyes. Ah, all right, but it's supposed to be red. So ectoplasm drips from its mouth as it shakes violently, attempting to take its collar off. One guard loses his grip as the chupacabra lunges at the other, sinking its fangs into his eyeballs.
Yikes.
With an acrobatic move, it backflips and bites the jugular of the other. Now free, it laps at the blood pooling on the ground. Ka-chink, ka-chink, ka-chink. The gates on the other side of the Colosseum open. A growl reverberates from the darkness, and green eyes peer out. Stepping from the darkness, a gray, mostly furless canine steps out. It barks, snarling as blood drips from its jaws. The chupacabras stare each other down.
Yeah, boy.
The bipedal one shifting into a runner stance and offering a shaky, alien-like call. The canine growls and shakes himself, causing his hair along his spine to stand up stiff. The two creatures attempt to intimidate each other through loud noises, but it soon becomes clear they'll have to fight to the death.
Ooh.
The canine takes off first, barreling right at the alien-like creature, who hops over the canine, athletically sliding on the ground. The canine turns around. The alien stares back. They charge at each other once again, and we cut to black. And we ask you, the listener, who wins?
Ooh.
Yee.
Chupacabra versus Chupacabra. Oh
Yeah,
boy.
now tell me, did you have that idea before I texted you about it?
Nope.
It was my idea. I'm so glad you wrote it, but it was my idea because I was listening to our old episode and we were talking about At that time, there were two versions that we were talking about, the canine version and the alien version. And I texted Eli and I was like, you should do alien versus canine Chupacabra. And he did. And I'm very happy and pleased with it.
I did. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't get a chance to listen to the original Chupacabra episode.
That's okay.
Yeah.
You're not missing much now with this sparkly new remake out.
Yeah, right. But yeah, when Jasmine texted me that was like too good of an opportunity to pass.
Yeah, that was awesome. Woohoo.
Yeah. I like all the 6-shooters.
Yeah, bunch of crazy cowboys.
But yeah, that's all I have for this week.
I think it was good. I think this has been much more deep than our first attempt at talking about El Chupacabra. Though we didn't learn much more. If we may have even gotten more confused, but we gave some more details and hopefully some entertaining bits of information.
Well, if I'm going to be searching the internet for the Chupacabra and my favorite podcast hosts, where can I go? Alex.
Ooh. Well, if you want to find me on the Instagram and Twitter, you can find me at AlexDaikaiju. That's Alex DAIKAIJU. On my Instagram, I usually post a lot of monster art or some cryptid art, so be sure to check it out and drop a like. And if I wanted to know, the real secrets of that mysterious Cradle Life, Ohio, I'd have to ask Jasmine Maywith.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. My name is the same on both, Jasmine Maywith, JasmineMaewith. Some of my sources today, I didn't mention information from all of them, but this is where I looked. We've got Encyclopedia Britannica, Animal Planet, BBC Earth, National Geographic, New York Times, Advocacy for Animals from Encyclopedia Britannica, Pacific Standard, an online Russian publication called RT, which I don't think I mentioned. I didn't go into detail about the Russian version of the Chupacabra. Los Angeles Times, and a website called News 965.
Woohoo! And let me do my sources real quick too. I used the Dreadnought Wikipedia. I used RT.com for the Russian Chupacabra as well. LiveScience.com, AnomalyInfo.com, and the British Broadcasting Channel.com.
Nice.
And now, without further ado, a man who needs no introduction, the one, the only, the Eli Watson.
A man who would like an introduction.
Well, then let's give it to you.
No.
Coming high from the peaks.
You can find me at the Eli Watson on Instagram, and my sources for today. Buckle in, everybody! It's quite a bit. We have Wikipedia, Cryptids Wiki, inexplicata.blogspot.com, bibliotecavirtualpr.wordpress.com, the San Antonio Current, the Yucatan Times, BBC.com, A to Z Cryptozoology by Lauren Coleman, Mysterious Creatures, A Guide to Cryptozoology by George Eberhardt, National Geographic, AllThatIsInteresting.com, and Occultopedia.
Woohoo!
Nice.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah, that's more info than I think we've ever had.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
straight up.
A lot of sources.
And we did it all for you, the listeners.
Yes, thank you for joining us on this revisit of El Chupacabra. If you're like a recent listener, or you've just recently learned about us, and you've been listening to our newer stuff, take a trip back to the beginning. We've said before that our old episodes are crap, and while they do lack a lot of factual information and research, I think we're still pretty entertaining. So it'll be a fun little compare and contrast to listen to this one and then go back and listen to the old one.
Woohoo.
Oh, for sure.
And who are we again?
Oh, shit. So you can follow at Cryptid Campfire on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And you can check out our official website, www.cryptidcampfire.com, where you can get yourself some snazzy Cryptid Campfire t-shirt.
Woohoo. Except no
And
substitute. This
except
is a
no,
threat.
no, it's not a threat. It's not a threat. And you, if you guys feel inclined, and if you guys like our content, please check out our Patreon page. For $5 a month, you get access to exclusive episodes. I think we're up to producing like 3 exclusive episodes a month for you guys,
Yeah,
along
for
with
$5
early,
a month.
yeah, early access to episodes. Instead of getting them on Tuesday, you get them on Sunday. And, we're constantly trying to add more to it all the time. So,
Yeah, so we'd love to have you there. Come on to the campfire.
yep. And we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thanks for listening.
Ooh, and I'd be remiss if I didn't add in the last episode that Chupacabra has no genitals.
That's right. No
Goodbye,
genitalia
everybody.
whatsoever.
Bye, guys.
This podcast is a part of Straight Up Strange Productions. Discover more shows like this one at straightup